Hey, welcome to week 5 of the Mystery Egg Division Draft League. Kind of out of order a little bit here. Me and Matt needed to get this match in. Matt is a coach of the Dead Sea Silvally, who I'm playing this week, and he's replacing an owner, and so he was a little behind on the games. By the time we tried to get one in for week 5, it was towards the end of the week, and we just weren't able to get it fit in. And then we had Labor Day weekend and I was out of town, so that wasn't going to work. And so now it's this week and we squeezed it in before the end of the deadline. So looking at Matt's team, he made some transactions when he came into the league, and the transactions were terrifying for me. Most notably right there at the top, Zygarde complete. My defensive core kind of relies on levitate flying Pokemon to negate a pretty strong ground weakness that I have overall, and 1,000 Arrows doesn't care about that. So that was an immediate obstacle to my team build. Aside from that, Mew, obviously terrifying, great draft league Pokemon, can run a multitude of different sets. Slowbro, very difficult to break. Tangrowth can be very difficult to break. Sneasel is a great Pokemon to threaten my Latias. Fernape, good offensive pressure, priority, which is something that I actually haven't had to deal with much in this league thus far. And then Mamoswine, who basically runs through my team. Thick Fat is an amazing ability. It basically negates a fire weakness, as well as, makes it technically resist ice. So that makes it hard to kill. And the combination of ground and ice is really good coverage against my team. So a lot of difficult stuff there. You have Skarmory, you can set up all sorts of hazards. Slurpuff. I wasn't as worried about Slurpuff, but it's always a threat because it can obviously run Belly Drum, Unburden. It can get Sticky Webs up. Always a problem. Stoutland has Intimidate, which is kind of the relevant thing in this matchup since he doesn't necessarily have Sandstorm or anything like that to get that weather condition up. Basically going into the match, I game planned for, again, the 6 Mons above. It's what I thought he would bring, and as I've said before, anytime I'm building, I consider every Pokemon on my opponent's team to some degree. Probably didn't consider Slurpuff very much here, so if Slurpuff got brought, could have been interesting, but I guess that's something to think about for future matchups. Getting into my sets, I had a meme Crocodile set, and I really, really wanted to bring it. I wanted to bring Block, Bulk Up. It was Block, Bulk Up, Substitute, Power Trip. There are certain Skarmory sets that, basically any Skarmory set that doesn't have a way to phase, like Whirlwind or something along those lines, that if he just assumes that we're going to just trade rocks turn 1, I hit block, he gets rocks up, cool. He can't switch out. I substitute, he cannot get a Toxic onto me. And then from there, I just bulk up in his face. And there's no way that Skarmory is going to kill me before I get to a reasonable amount of setup. And depending on my item, if I run either leftovers or like a 50% berry, like a pinch berry or something like that, I sweep his whole team if I get to a sufficient level of health. It was actually also fairly specially defensive to prevent something like, the Rash Raikou with Aura Sphere from being able to damage me. Didn't end up running that set because I didn't think he'd bring Skarmory, and if he doesn't bring Skarmory, I don't set up on anything, and I have just a dead Pokemon, and having a useless Pokemon was not what I wanted to go for. But, that aside, let's get into the actual sets that I brought. Crocodile here. I went back and forth between Expert Belt Life Orb and a Choice Scarf set. Ended up going with the Expert Belt because of the damage output on a couple of his Pokemon, namely Mamoswine, which is a huge threat to me. Expert Belt Low Kick will kill uninvested Mamoswine, whereas Choice Scarf Low Kick does not, which was a problem for me. Earthquake is pretty standard here. If I was Scarf, it would have been really good against Raikou. This set, if it was Scarf, would have probably run Moxie and done something different. But this was basically just damage output, and I did want rocks up just in general. Crunch or Knockoff was another kind of back and forth in my head. Knockoff doesn't hit a Z Mew for very much damage at all, which is quite possible that he could have brought. It also doesn't hit Slowbro Mega for very much damage at all. In fact, I just get stalled out by Mega Slowbro, even if I am Life Orb. It just sits there and recovers in my face. Whereas Crunch at least gives me a chance to get some defense drops, so I don't just lose to Slowbro. I probably don't win the 1v1 still because Slowbro is ridiculous, but it gives me an out to some degree. And then Rocks, just wanted to get Rocks up. The next set, this is kind of the heat set. Yes. This is a weakness policy, Sacred Fire, Brave Bird, Flame Charge, Giga Drain. Giga Drain. Oh. Maybe this works, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's a complete waste of a good Pokemon. Basically, the idea is Raikou or Slowbro can activate weakness policy. I've been really frustrated with weakness policy. It doesn't activate on substitute, which sucks, because if you have a substitute up, then obviously you're only going to take 25% max and you can get the +2/+2. And it doesn't activate for 1,000 arrows, because 1,000 arrows is always neutral. Like, in theory, that kind of helps me, because otherwise, 4x damage. But I'm fire, so like, I feel it shouldn't always be neutral. It should be super effective, because I'm fire, and then knock me to the ground, But it doesn't work that way. And so weakness policy only can really activate between Slowbro and Raikou. If it does activate, and he's not like Scarf Raikou or something like that, Flame Charge on Raikou. Raikou Thunderbolts into me. I'm +2/+2, +1. And from there, Brave Bird kills uninvested Zygarde. And Zygarde can't kill me because of the fact that I said earlier. 1,000 arrows is always neutral with the first hit, so I would live. I could kill it with Flame Charge into Brave Bird, or I could probably kill it with Sacred Fire into... I could kill it with any two attacks, basically, as long as one of them is Brave Bird, so maybe Recoil is a problem there. Sacred Fire kills pretty much everything else on his team, with 2 exceptions. Sacred Fire or Brave Bird kill everything else on his team with 2 exceptions, which are Mamoswine, which I think can potentially live because Thick Fat, but maybe not. And Mega Slowbro. The thing about both of them is I have Giga Drain. Giga Drain's a weird tech, but it hits both of them, and it gives me some recovery. So against Slowbro, who could tank some hits, potentially, and just kind of spam recover while I'm getting whittled from Brave Bird Recoil, I can Giga Drain that, recover some health, and do over 50%. So that was the idea behind the set. See if it works out. Next set is Mega Latias. Mega Latias here, 2 attacks, Calm Mind, Recover. The 2 attacks, Dragon Pulse felt necessary because it has neutral coverage against a large majority of your team. Slurpuff and Skarmory are the only resists, so good coverage there. And then the other move was kind of a toss-up, so T-Bolt and Ice Beam were obviously the considerations. Ice Beam allowed me to hit Tangrowth and Zygarde a little harder. If I'm not set up, Dragon Pulse doesn't kill, whereas Ice Beam could. Thunderbolt allowed me to hit Skarmory and Slowbro. So I went with Thunderbolt because it gave me basically neutral coverage against his whole team, and that seemed a little bit more valuable to me if I got set up or anything like that. This set's pretty basic. The speed is for base 100s, so I guess that's Mew. And then max HP and the rest up in special attack. Max HP on Latias is so good. It's really all you need in a lot of cases to just tank so many hits. If this gets set up, I can see it putting in a lot of work. Otherwise, it's just going to be a nice damage sponge and just be able to kind of chip away at his team. Next set here, this has kind of been a favorite of mine in Draft League thus far, is the Life Orb Trick Room Magearna. This seems pretty fast overall, aside from Slowbro. And under Trick Room, Bolt Beam plus Fleur Cannon has amazing coverage. So the idea of this, if I get Trick Room up, I just start putting in work. Thunderbolt was kind of a late swap. I forgot. I had Grass Knot for a while to maybe hit Mamoswine and Slowbro a little bit harder. But then I just get walled by Skarmory. And I didn't think he would bring Skarmory, but I didn't want to get walled by it. So I ended up going with Thunderbolt, Ice Beam, Fleur Cannon, and then just Trick Room. The other nice thing about running Trick Room on Magearna is you don't have to invest in speed, and you can get that HP just for a little bit more longevity. I guess in theory this isn't optimal. I should probably be running 359 HP, whatever that is EV wise. So I guess that's 232, and then something like that would have been better. So I'm post-comming this. This minimizes life orb recoil, so it does 35 damage instead of 36. It's kind of a minor optimization, but it is an optimization I should have taken into account. Next set is Shuri, the Crobat. Basically, this is just defog. That's what Crobat's for. It's for defog. I need rocks away for Ho-Oh to be able to do decent amount of work. Otherwise, it could potentially die to the moves it needs to survive to activate weakness policy. So this is just a bulky bat. Enough speed for 363. I believe that's Infernape? I can check really quick. No, it's something more than Infernape. It must be Sneasel or Raikou. That would make sense. So I'm assuming it's enough speed for base 115s. Black Sludge, Infiltrator, Roost, U-Turn, Toxic, Defog. Again, Defog's primary purpose. Toxic also gives me a way to hit Mew and Zygarde if they get a substitute setup or something like that, which could be really annoying. Infiltrator Toxic is so nice against setup. This is something I've really enjoyed with Crobat thus far. U-Turn just for momentum. It's not looking to do damage output. I'm not invested in attack. It's fully support this week. Last Pokemon, Suicune. Scald, Toxic, Ice Beam, Protect, max HP, max defense. This is my answer to Zygarde and Mamoswine to some degree. I need something that can sponge physical hits. I have options on the team, but I want them to be doing other things other than sitting there sponging attacks. The set here, Calm Mind didn't seem like a good play this week. I'm not going to be able to do much with Calm Mind with Raikou out there opposing me. So Scald's potentially to fish for burns, just get off good damage against Mamoswine. Toxic is to prevent just setup in my face, basically. And then Ice Beam is on here to help deal with substitute Zygarde. So essentially, Ice Beam into substitute Zygarde. Zygarde doesn't want to substitute anymore. And then I can fire off the Toxic. I could get outplayed on that, but I feel like if someone shows Ice Beam with Zygarde, you're either going to switch out one, or you're just going to start setting up or attacking. Neither one seemed great against Suicune, which is part of the reason I brought it this week. So that's the team. Okay, so we're here for the battle now, and looks like I was wrong about Skarmory. I didn't think it had a good matchup, but it did end up coming. And other than that, it looks like I got the rest of the team correct. Skarmory just replaces Slowbro. Not too big of a deal. Skarmory is kind of tough to deal with, given that I didn't prep amazingly for it. I'm glad with some of the last minute additions with T-Bolt on Lati, and not going with my, well, you know, potentially going with my block set would have been kind of funny if it worked out. So in terms of lead here, Kirk has a good matchup against pretty much his entire team, mostly because of Intimidate, and I guess the only thing it doesn't lead up very well against is Skarmory, but then we just trade rocks, and I'm okay getting rocks up. My one concern initially is if I lead Crook, we both click rocks, I kind of have to just switch out, and if he just goes straight for a defog or spikes, starts stacking on me, I don't have a great way to deal with that, and he kind of gets an early advantage. He's going to have hazards up where I won't, basically. So I'm going to end up leading with Crook. So I lead with Crook, and Matt goes with Skarmory. So it's kind of what was expected. Skarmory is his best lead. The only thing that really beats it is if I lead Ho-Oh. And leading Ho-Oh into Mamoswine or Raikou, or a lot of his team just doesn't sound very good. So I'm leading Crocodile here. He leads Skarmory. We just trade rocks. I think this makes sense for both of us. He wants rocks up for Ho-Oh. Everyone wants rocks up for Ho-Oh. I want rocks up to chip away at his entire team, basically. It's not doing a lot of damage, but it's doing some, and that damage can be important. On like max HP Mamoswine, for instance, if I get rock damage on it, low kick from Crocodile will kill. Just getting chip everywhere is kind of nice. So I get rocks up, he gets rocks up. In this position, I need to switch out. Actually didn't need to switch out. It was weird. So I changed away from Scarf last minute, and so I was convinced I was Scarf Crocodile for the first several turns of this game, which is really dumb. So again, assuming I'm not Scarf, but I'm thinking I'm Scarf because I'm an idiot, I'm like, I have to switch. What do I switch into? I don't have great switch-ins. The one option that I potentially had was Magirna. So Magirna's not going to take damage from anything that Skarmory's going to do. T-Wave, I guess, is annoying, but I'm a Trick Room variant, so I don't really care. So I end up going Magirna. It seemed like the safest play, especially if he just defogs, then I can get Trick Room up and start doing some damage to his team, because his entire team is going to end up being faster than Magirna under Trick Room. So I go ahead and make that pivot. I switch in, and he reveals Tailwind. Now, Tailwind's really interesting. So his team, at first glance, I was assuming like Scarf Mamo, Calm Mind Raikou. Matt seems to have really enjoy his setup Pokemon, so he runs setup a lot, which makes sense because his team's great for it. You've got Nasty Plot, SD, whatever, Infernape. It's got a lot of setup options. Raikou has Calm Mind and is terrifying because of its speed tier. Zygarde obviously is an amazing setup Pokemon. Mew is another setup Pokemon. So Tailwind was interesting. I didn't really exactly know what to do to respond to Tailwind. It was nice that I switched into Magirna because Magirna has an obvious out in terms of Trick Room. But my initial thoughts were something like Calm Mind, Raikou, either Coil or Dragon Dance Zygarde. I was probably leaning more towards Dragon Dance because of its speed tier. It kind of wants to get some speed on the rest of my team. Mew, I could have seen a bunch of different things from Mew. Once I saw Skarmory, I assumed setup. So something like Nasty Plot. Scarf Mamoswine was something I was thinking would come for sure against me. Scarf or Life Orb, it had to be offensive. There's no way it was going to bring rocks on Mamoswine. Just had too good of a matchup. And then Infernape, I could see a million different sets. So Tailwind made me really confused because I didn't know exactly how that was going to fit with the rest of his team. In this position, I just go for Trick Room, punish the Tailwind, all that stuff. But he reveals Roar, and so this also reveals if Matt was paying attention, obviously, because I still think I'm Scarf, so I'm sure I miss things like this all the time. That guarantees to him that my Magirna is Trick Room. It's the only way that interaction goes down like that is if I click Trick Room, and because of the negative priority of both moves. So this brings me back in the Crocodile. Again, not the position I want to be in. Still under the impression that Crocodile is Scarf, and I don't have a great move to lock into here. So I hard switch now that I know that he knows that my Magirna is Trick Room. At this point, I hard switch into Suicune. Suicune's also not going to take too much damage here. I don't anticipate him going for Toxic when I've already shown Magirna as a switch in. So I go ahead and pivot into Suicune, and he just fires off another Roar here. And this makes sense. He's kind of fishing to get Ho-Oh out. Ho-Oh actually doesn't have recovery this week, so that would have been really bad for me. Most weeks I bring recovery on Ho-Oh, but in this case, he's burning his Tailwind turns, trying to get Ho-Oh in, which makes a lot of sense. It does good damage to me, and then I'm in a pretty bad position. Although, I don't know exactly what on his team wants to switch into a Sacred Fire, specifically. So, he might have gotten what he wanted, but I don't know if he wanted to get that necessarily. So I get Crocodile out again. I don't want Crocodile in. This time I hit Crunch. I think after I hit Crunch and I realized that I could click different moves is when I'm like, oh shit, I'm not Scarf. No, actually, no, I don't realize it here. I realize it very soon. So I click Crunch just to get some damage off, break a potential Sturdy. He roars me out again. I get Suicune in again. This is a pretty good bring in for me, actually. The rest of my team would have taken a lot of damage. And, maybe Magirna in would have been better, but I don't think I can complain about this. At this point, I'm going to fire off Scald just to keep damaging Skarmory. He goes for Tailwind. Scald, I get a burn, but he reveals Lumberry. Now, Lumberry is interesting here. I'm not sure why he's running Lumberry, especially with no attacks. I don't have any way of putting him to sleep on my team, I don't think. Maybe I have, Crobat has Hypnosis, I guess I could run that. And if he doesn't have any attacks, Burn's really not that big of a deal. I could run Thunder Wave. I think some of my Pokemon get Thunder Wave. I haven't even really considered status as kind of a win con, and it's obviously immune to Toxic. So that was kind of an interesting item choice on Skarmory. Matt, if you've got your thought process behind it, I'd be interested to hear it. So here I just go for another Scald. finish, get the kill. Potentially risky because it gets him in with Tailwind up, and he brings in Raikou, and this turn was really interesting. So this is really had a lot of thought into this turn. I knew I survived a Thunderbolt from this range, even though I'm heavily physically biased. The max HP I survived a Thunderbolt, barring choice specs. I think was the only way it killed me. Obviously, Electrium Z would kill me. But I didn't want to pivot out to anything and allow substitute or setup. So I also had Toxic, and Toxic was an option against a Calm Mindset. But if he used substitute, he's going to get a sub and a Calm Mind off. Both of those are horrible for me. Luckily, the damage calc, I didn't check this before going into the battle, but Scald on an uninvested Raikou, I think broke the sub, which is why I ended up going for Scald in this position. I just didn't want to leave him behind a sub because, again, I'm under the impression that Crocodile is Scarf. And as long as he doesn't have a sub, Crocodile always revenges as long as Tailwind's down. So the line of play that I assumed was substitute, Scald into substitute, Scald breaks the sub. Then with the last turn of Tailwind, I can go ahead and sack Suicune potentially to another Scald into substitute or whatever. And basically Suicune has to die against Raikou so I can get Crocodile in and prevent Raikou from setting up. Raikou actually had a lot of pressure on my team this game. So I fire off the Scald, he goes for Calm Mind, and so this is pretty bad. After a Calm Mind, Scald's not going to break a substitute, and Toxic isn't a play if he's got substitute here. So if he goes for sub here, I'm in a lot of trouble. So the other problem is that at +1, Aura Sphere, which he's not shiny. I always forget to check that. I remember it when I'm team building, but not when I'm actually playing. So in theory, he couldn't have Aura Sphere because you have to be shiny Rash Nature because of an event to have Aura Sphere. I'm 90% sure. +1 Aura Sphere kills Crocodile. And I'm also not Scarf. And I think this is where I'm realizing I'm not Scarf and that I don't have a great immediate answer to this. So I fire off another... I think I fire off Toxic here. Yeah, it's because I didn't want him to set up further, and he reveals Thunder. I had a very slim chance, depending on his investment, of surviving Thunderbolt at +1. It was like a 15% roll that I could live. So I figured if I get Toxic off, that's good for me. Thunder, I was not surviving. I was actually really surprised to see Thunder. I think it's a cool tech. It picks up a lot of KOs that Thunderbolt doesn't, and I'm not going to EV for Thunder. I don't think that's a realistic thing to do in a general sense. So that kills me. Seeing Thunder, I'm like, well, Ho-Oh is not going to survive that at +1 regardless. So I need to deal with this. Crocodile, again, I had forgotten about the shiny Rash Nature Aura Sphere Raikou, and he's obviously not shiny, so he doesn't have Aura Sphere, but he could be running other moves. I'm pretty sure it gets Grass Knot that could do a lot to Crocodile if he's Grassium Z or something like that. I think just regular Grass Knot does quite a bit as well. So my safest switch in here is Latias. Just kind of pivot, take a hit, and force him out. So I make that play. Mega Latias was taking nothing from Thunder. It resisted it. Hidden Power Ice, I think, was doing like 35% max, so I can stall that out. I'm going to bring in Mega Latias, and I'm just going to Calm Mind to kind of neuter its damage output. Here it hits the second Thunder in a row. That's 0.7 times 0.7 is 49% to hit 2 in a row, so it's more than likely that you don't hit 2 Thunders. But after a Calm Mind, Thunder's not a threat at all. I'll go ahead and recover here to make sure that I'm out of range of Adamant, Life Orb, Mamoswine's Icicle Crash, which is kind of my biggest threat in terms of a switch in. He goes for Thunder again, ends up missing. I think that's fair. 2 for 3 is a little bit below expectation, so hitting 2 is not in his favor, but only hitting 2 out of 3 is slightly in my favor. I don't want to analyze hacks here because there's not any so far. So we go ahead and do that. At this point, I'm going to Calm Mind again. I'm out of range of Mamoswine. I don't see anything on his team that immediately threatens me. I know that my speed investment outspeeds base 100s. I just don't see anything that threatens me. So I'm going to go ahead and get up another Calm Mind, because at +2, I pick up a lot of key KOs. I think Mamoswine died at +1. Zygarde dies at +2. A lot of his team is heavily threatened by +2, but not necessarily +1. So I get another Calm Mind up, and he goes into Mamoswine. So at this point, I know Mamoswine dies. He could be Scarf, and Scarf Icicle Crash can flinch, which would be a huge problem. But Scarf Icicle Crash is not going to kill me. It does do more than 50%, so he just needs one flinch. But I'm in a great position here. I don't think I can switch out. So I just go ahead and fire off the Dragon Pulse. It reveals he's not Scarf, and I pick up the KO. So at this point, it looks really bad for Matt. +2, special attack, special defense, Mega Latias with Dragon Pulse puts in a ton of work, and that's basically what plays out. Infernape as an initial switch in is, I guess, kind of odd. There's not a lot that Infernape has that can threaten Mega Latias. It ends up being able to outspeed me because I didn't invest for 108 speed. I just invested for 100. Flare Blitz, I guess going for a burn. He might have been, he could be Choice Scarf for 1, but it ends up he's Life Orb. I don't know if it really had much better coverage to hit me. Knockoff's not going to do very much, so it's kind of just for chip, I suppose. Dragon Pulse picks up that KO. From here he goes into Zygarde. For a half second I thought if he's like a Dragon Reduce Berry or something like that, but I don't know, Zygarde it didn't force me out by any means. I knew I outsped it. I guess he could have been Choice Scarf. Seems like a really weird item choice on Zygarde, so much so that I didn't even really consider it. If he's Choice Scarf, Outrage, or something like that, I guess you tip your hat and you just kind of take that. I'm not sure of the damage roll on that. I'm sure it would have done a lot. I don't know if it would have killed. I didn't calculate at this point. Again, I'm just kind of in, and I'm just going to get as many kills as I can. Dragon Pulse picks up the KO. I think it did 140 to uninvested Zygarde, so I don't know what kind of crazy investment, or like, I guess he could have run Dragon Reduce Berry or something. Doesn't matter at this point. It picks up the KO. Mew comes out. I thought this was going to kill, actually, so he must have been pretty heavily specially defense invested. But he survives, fires off his own Dragon Pulse. Dragon Pulse makes me think that maybe that's like an AV Mew or something like that. Would also explain the survive there. But it didn't really do enough for it to be AV in my mind, so probably just like heavily specially defense invested and just teched on Dragon Pulse to hit Latias specifically. So second Dragon Pulse picks up the KO here, and then Raikou comes out. And Raikou I thought was in range again, but another survive after a Thunder Para. So this doesn't kill, takes him down to 1%. The Thunder Para kind of gave him an out, I guess. It's possible that staying in here was a bit greedy, but +1, he wasn't going to kill me, did 9% with Thunder. And I didn't really want to pivot out to anything else and kind of open a door. Say I go into Crobat, which outspeeds Raikou. If he fires off a Thunder and hits, then Crobat dies, and then I need to pivot into something else. I don't have anything else that straight up outspeeds, so it gets kind of dodgy. So just sticking with Latias here seemed like my best play. And just, I could fire off a Dragon Pulse. Maybe if I don't break through there, maybe I hit Recover. Basically, I need to not get parried 3 turns in a row to win the game. And so I'm just going to stick in and just fire off Dragon Pulse. And you Calm Minds, which is the right play. I Dragon Pulse, break through, and kill. So that's the end of the match. It was a good game to Matt. I think he just under-prepped for Latias. And I think Tailwind could have worked, but Tailwind and then fishing for Ho to be brought in on a Whirlwind. I mean, the odds aren't in your favor, right? It's 1 in 5 that you bring in Ho. You got a little unlucky there. You did it 3 times, so 0.8, 0.8, 0.8 in terms of getting in Ho. You're right around 50% in terms of being able to do it, and so that's a coin flip. God, I don't know whatever 0.8 times 0.64 is the odds of getting Ho-Oh in any of those 3 interactions. So I get the strategy there. Tailwind was a little interesting. It would have been. It just didn't really threaten me if you were sitting and spamming Roar when Tailwind was up. Probably would have been better served just doing Roar. Tailwind I can imagine it helps your team, but it doesn't help your team if you don't pivot out into something else. It would have been a really good battle if I didn't get Latias set up at any point, because I would have had a lot of trouble dealing with Mamoswine. I didn't even get to see Mamoswine set. There's a lot that threatened me. Same thing with Zygarde. So those two were huge threats, and basically I just got set up first, and that's kind of been a theme in Ubers that I've noticed so far. Is whoever sets up first often wins. If you don't have answers for it, just these Pokemon are so powerful that you're not really going to be able to stop them once they get set up. So, good game to Matt. Thank you for being accommodating with the schedule. I know it's been kind of a headache between both of us the last 3 weeks at this point. So, thank you to Adamant, who helped a little bit with team building this week, and Brian, who also helped a little bit with team building this week. At some point, I feel like I gotta branch out and just kind of do one on my own and see how I do. I think I'm getting a little bit more comfortable with Draft League team building, and much more comfortable with playing in Draft League format. I think the first couple weeks, I was constantly paranoid that the other team had the perfect set to deal with me, and you can see it a little bit this week with Suicune wanting to prevent a substitute from Raikou. It's a standard set, but again, kind of assuming they have the perfect set at all times. I think I've gotten away from that a little bit. But it's been fun so far. This brings us to 5-2. Pretty good position for playoffs. We've got 3 matches left. I think if we win 1, we're probably good. As long as we don't just tank the differential. But it's been fun so far. Looking forward to the next battle. If you guys have any comments on the team, anything that could be improved, again, let me know. Throw them down there in the comments. And other than that, I'll see you next time.